Sudan finds itself amidst one of the most turbulent periods in its history, a crisis that has unfortunately been met with global silence. The turmoil commenced in April 2023 when escalating conflicts between rival armed factions in Khartoum raised alarms about a potential return to civil war. Since then, the Sudanese populace has been caught up in a conflict driven by the greed of two military generals, a situation not of their own making. In a mere 6 months into the war, the death toll has surpassed 10,000 and 5.6 million individuals have been displaced. Many have sought refuge in regions such as Chad, Ethiopia, and South Sudan, but the ongoing power struggle persists, putting countless innocent lives at risk. In commemorating the 6-month mark of the conflict, United Nations Under-Secretary General Martin Griffiths declared this situation as one of the worst humanitarian nightmares in recent history. He highlighted distressing reports of rape and sexual violence, emphasizing the country's descent into complete chaos. International efforts to mediate and establish peace have proven disjointed and ineffective. The actions of various regional powers, driven by their own interests, have only exacerbated the crisis. What precisely sustains this crisis, and could there be more to the international narrative? Sudan's chaotic history traces back to its joint protectorate status with Egypt and the UK until 1956. Internal divisions emerged, notably between the wealthier Arab-majority North and the less developed, predominantly Christian or animist South. A 12-year civil war claimed approximately 1 million lives, temporarily quelled by the Addis Ababa Agreement, granting autonomy to the South. In 1983, President Ga'afa Nimeri annulled this autonomy, imposing nationwide Islamic law and reigniting hostilities, leading to the devastating Second Sudanese Civil War, which lasted 2 gruesome decades. The conflict's turning point came in 2005 with the Comprehensive Peace Agreement between the Sudanese government and the Sudan People's Liberation Army or movement, paving the way for the semi-autonomous region of South Sudan. In 2011, a referendum resulted in South Sudan's overwhelming vote for independence, formally establishing the Republic of South Sudan and concluding the Second Sudanese Civil War. Despite initial hopes for peace following this split into Sudan and South Sudan, Sudan is once again confronting a renewed civil war in 2023. This time, the conflict doesn't stem from regional divisions, but rather unfolds between two conflicting powers. It all began with the collaboration of the two most powerful security forces in Sudan to overthrow the president. The Sudanese armed forces, responsible for national defense and internal security, joined forces with the Rapid Support Forces, originally emerging from the Janjaweed militias and officially becoming the RSF in 2013. Led by Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan of the SAF and General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo of the RSF, these armies orchestrated the removal of Sudan's head of state, Omar al-Bashir, in a 2019 coup. The initially agreed-upon transition to civilian rule took an unexpected turn when al-Burhan seized power outright in the 2021 coup, appointing Hamdan as his deputy and sparking a rivalry. Negotiations in December 2022 proposed a 2-year transition to civilian leadership, but tensions rose over the RSF's role under new governance. Both generals scrambled to secure their positions, fueling persistent unrest and violent crackdowns. Internal disagreements within Burhan's government, particularly regarding Hamdan and the RSF, further fueled the turmoil. By early April 2023, Khartoum witnessed increased military presence and explosions, with SAF and RSF leaders accusing each other of initiating violence. The power struggle between Burhan and Hamdan has hampered the country's transition efforts, instilling fears of a looming full-scale civil war. Nevertheless, the Sudanese conflict transcends a mere struggle between two generals, originating from a disrupted political transition that prioritized dismantling the old regime over addressing economic issues. Omar al-Bashir's rule was characterized by Islamic laws, and for some, the potential disintegration of the country is preferable to a resurgence of Islamists. In 2019, Abdallah Hamdok, who emerged as a civilian leader, had his policies and actions interpreted through a religious lens by some segments of Sudanese society. In October 2021, he was overthrown in a military coup led by Burhan. Despite international negotiations, Hamdok's return to power was brief, as he struggled to unite the country and implement reforms within the confines of a power-sharing arrangement. While the current conflict remains a power struggle between the RSF and the SAF, it is also fueled by religious tensions reminiscent of the First Civil War in 1956. Unfortunately, Sudan's disintegration has only persisted since the onset of the crisis, worsening significantly. The dire situation, already alarming before April 2023, has escalated with over 600 casualties in the first month of conflict, widespread destruction of infrastructure, and more than 4 million people internally displaced. The closure of transport routes is exacerbating food scarcity. With the SAF in control of Port Sudan, areas held by opposing groups are experiencing deprivation. The current state situation teeters on the edge of catastrophe, with people depending solely on the exceptional efforts of Sudanese groups offering solidarity and support. Egypt's trade networks have contributed to food supply, but this comes with drawbacks for the country, as this has burdened its supply chains, inflated food prices, and raised security concerns. The consequences of the Sudanese war are reaching beyond Egypt, impacting other countries too. The ongoing conflict poses a threat to destabilizing the entire East African region. There is a risk of armed groups spilling over into neighboring countries, exacerbating existing conflicts or triggering new ones. The influx of refugees fleeing violence places a heavy burden on neighboring states like Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Chad, stretching their resources and straining relations. The instability in Sudan is already severe for its citizens, but the reality is that many other countries will bear the consequences as the war persists. So, what has been the state of play in Sudan in recent months? In late October 2023, under international pressure, the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces reluctantly resumed negotiations, yet persistent violence prevailed, with neither side committing to a ceasefire. In November, RSF forces and allied militias killed over 800 people in Adamata, reflecting a surge in ethnically driven killings targeting the Masalit. Efforts have been undertaken by rebel groups to counter potential harm caused by the RSF and the SAF. In October, the Darfur Joint Protection Forces, established in April 2023 by 4 non-Arab rebel groups under the Juba Peace Agreement, deployed reinforcements northeast of El Fasher in North Darfur. Their move was intended to address potential RSF attacks in the region and safeguard civilians during the ongoing war. However, there is a growing concern that this situation may evolve into a full-fledged, ethnically based conflict as RSF fighters, mainly from Arab tribes, clash with the non-Arab Darfur Joint Protection Forces. Additionally, the RSF has formed alliances with Arab militias, asserting dominance over Sudan's army in 4 primarily non-Arab regions in Darfur. This has resulted in numerous civilian casualties, incidents of sexual violence, and widespread looting. The RSF and their Arab militia allies are reported to have caused the death of 1,300 non-Arab Masalit civilians in an IDP camp in West Darfur, with the motive being the acquisition of land and water resources. The looming threat extends to North Darfur if the RSF gains control over the region from the army. More uncoordinated efforts aimed at brokering peace have been made. The African Union and the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, led by Kenya, have proposed initiatives, while Egypt advocates for a forum involving all neighboring frontline states. In Jeddah, the United States and Saudi Arabia established their initiative for emergency diplomacy, yet achieving a lasting halt to hostilities remains difficult. With SAF gaining the upper hand on the main battlefield and RSF losing military momentum, the expectation is for the latter to seek peace, especially as tribal fighters from Western Sudan to Khartoum diminish. Sudan has long endured successive wars, and there is a collective hope for an end to the ongoing unrest, whether through the establishment of civilian rule or the resolution of military faction rivalries. Sudanese people fervently desire an end to the bloodshed and violence. Subscribe to our channel and embark on a journey into Africa's hidden narratives and untold stories. Dive into the continent's rich history, unravel geopolitical complexities, and navigate its dynamic economy. It's more than just staying informed. It's a venture to challenge misconceptions and celebrate Africa. Join a community committed to understanding, engaging, and appreciating Africa. Hit subscribe, embrace the unknown, and become a part of reshaping perspectives.